Hey everybody, and welcome back to a special edition of Weather Wednesday. If you were watching me yesterday, I was talking about wind and talking about how there have been some significant wind events over the last couple weeks. And since one just happened, we wanted to show you what went on. So using science on a sphere here, let's take a look at what has been happening around the world with special wind events. So here over my shoulder, I have the United States. And here you can see Hurricane Laura right there, just about ready to form. Once it hits the warm water of the Gulf of Mexico, then it really strengthens. In fact, scientists call this, if a storm strengthens by 24 millibar, that's a pressure measurement. If it strengthens, if the pressure drops 24 millibar in 24 hours, it is said to undergo bombogenesis, where it bombs out. Well, this storm dropped by, I believe it was 45 millibar in just 24 hours. So that definitely counts as undergoing bombogenesis. But you can see right here, not much of a good shape to that. But as soon as it hits that warm water, that's the fuel that it needs to really erupt. And then you can see as soon as it erupts, it develops a nice eye wall there. And right before land, it develops into a high Category 3 hurricane. I believe it got up to a Category 4, a low Category 4 hurricane for some parts. But as it approached the coast of Texas and Louisiana, it was in the middle of the night. So that means that the heat and humidity wasn't quite there to keep that fuel going. And then once it hits land, it loses all of that energy source, all of that fuel source. And that's why it just kind of falls apart. But still, quite a bit is still here, providing a lot of precipitation, a lot of some winds. The winds have died down quite a bit. But there's a big cleanup that is going to need to happen. I read that there's a 9-foot storm surge. That means, if you can imagine, me standing here close to 6 feet tall, imagine 3 more feet of water, a wall of water that high, coming onshore. So there's a lot of flooding on the coastline of Texas and Louisiana, and a lot of wind damage. Also read that over 600,000 homes and businesses were without power because of this storm. Thankfully, not much loss of life from this. There was plenty of warning, and a majority of people evacuated that area. So if you are ever in an area where the authorities are telling you, hey, you need to evacuate, there's a possible danger coming, you need to listen to that, because that's what saves lives. So that is what Hurricane Laura looks like. Now, looking around the rest of the world real quick, last time, I talked to you about how there was a typhoon or a hurricane event just south of Korea. And here we see right there, you can see it right here. And it did strike Korea and North Korea there, especially North Korea. And we don't know the results of that. As with most things with North Korea, there's not a whole lot of information that comes out of that country. So hoping that everybody has stayed safe there, as that typhoon, only the second confirmed typhoon to hit North Korea there. Now, as I look forward, looking at this little clump of clouds here and this clump of clouds here, that makes me curious to think, could another typhoon form out of that? Well, using our Science on a Sphere forecast model here, looking at that area, here's the Philippines, and this is the area that I was talking about. Look at this tight circled event right here. That is a low pressure system, a very strong low pressure system. Could be the formation of another typhoon, and the forecast model calls for it moving moving up toward Japan there. So as that tries to catch up with me there, you can see those rings. Now what those rings are is that is a pressure gradient. The closer those rings come together, the stronger that low pressure system would be. So stay tuned to our Weather Wednesdays to find out more information about what is going on. Now I want to finish this. By answering a question that has come up from one of our viewers. One of our viewers was asking, okay, with all these hurricanes going on, why could a hurricane form in the Pacific, and why does the Pacific coast not get hurricanes? Well, to answer that, remember I mentioned that with Hurricane Laura, once it hit those warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, then it really added the fuel to become a hurricane status. So let's take a look at sea surface temperature, guys, because sea surface temperature, that's what really dictates, that's what tells you whether it's, that's sea surface, that's temperature. Here is sea surface temperature anomaly. This is what really tells you whether a hurricane has the fuel needed to keep going. So here you can see, this is called sea surface temperature anomaly. If the waters are warmer than usual, it's going to be red. If it's colder than usual, it's going to be blue. As we fast forward to today's date, recently, August 25th, you can see the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico here. And there was some warm waters off the coast of Baja, the Baja Peninsula there off of Mexico. There was a hurricane that formed off of Baja, but then as it made its way north, it encountered some cooler water and then went away. So one of the things to look for to answer the question of why would a hurricane form in the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico more frequently than the Pacific Ocean is it has a lot to do with the temperature of the ocean. So maybe next week we'll take a closer look at sea surface temperature and how that might affect evaporation, how that might affect the fuel needed for hurricane formation. Until then, send me your questions. Send me your pictures, remember, of the weather stations. If you see some weather stations in your neighborhood, send me a picture of one of those weather stations. And send me those questions on weather. So we look forward to seeing you next time on our next Weather Wednesday. Stay safe, everybody, and have